Have you noticed something? Every time Iran appears in the news, the conversation almost always revolves around politics, conflict, or religion. And somewhere in that conversation, a common assumption quietly forms in people's minds that religious minorities, especially Christians, must be struggling to survive there. But here's the real question. How much of that assumption is actually true? What if the story is far more complex, far more historical, and in many ways, completely unexpected? Because the truth is, Christians have been living in Persia, modern-day Iran, for nearly 2,000 years. Not just surviving, but trading, teaching, building communities, and at times, even influencing empires. So today, we're not just looking at headlines, we're going on a journey through history. A journey divided into 5 major eras, each one revealing how Christians lived, adapted, and contributed within Persian society under completely different political and religious systems.
Let's begin long before modern Iran existed, back when powerful empires ruled this land: the Median Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, and later the Sassanid Empire. During this time, the dominant belief system wasn't Islam, it was Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest monotheistic religions in the world. A religion built on a simple but powerful idea: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. Now, Christianity entered Persia much later, around the 1st century CE, not through conquest, but through something far more peaceful: trade routes and traveling missionaries. Small Christian communities began forming in key cities. Their numbers were tiny, likely no more than 1 to 2% of the population. They didn't control power. They didn't dominate politics, but they existed. They built churches. They practiced their faith quietly. They worked as merchants, doctors, craftsmen, and scholars. In cities like Ctesiphon, people of different religions lived side by side, not perfectly, but often cooperatively. Of course, tensions did exist, especially when Persian rulers feared that Christians might align with rival empires like Rome or Byzantium. And yes, there were moments of restriction and pressure. But those moments didn't define the entire era, because despite being a minority under a different state religion, Christians in Persia endured, adapted, and became part of the society. Now we move forward to a major turning point: the Islamic conquest of Persia in 651 CE. With this, Persia became part of the Islamic world. And Christians, they didn't disappear. Instead, they became what Islamic law referred to as people of the book. This status gave them a unique position. They were allowed to practice their religion, maintain churches, run their own community affairs. In return, they paid a tax known as jizya. Now, here's where things get interesting. Christians weren't just passive minorities. They played active roles in society. They became translators of Greek knowledge into Arabic, doctors and scholars, merchants connecting different regions. In fact, some of the most important knowledge from ancient Greece survived because Christian scholars translated and preserved it in cities like Baghdad, Isfahan, and Shiraz. Muslims and Christians often worked together in science, medicine, and education. Yes, there were occasional tensions, especially during political conflicts. But overall, Christians remained a visible and functioning part of society. Now we enter a defining era in Iran's identity. Starting in 1501, the Safavid dynasty made a bold move. They declared Shia Islam as the official state religion. This decision shaped Iran forever. So what happened to Christians? Did they vanish? Not at all. In fact, under Shah Abbas I, something remarkable happened. Thousands of Armenian Christians were relocated to a new district in Isfahan called Nujalfa. And instead of declining, they thrived. This community became a global trade hub, a center for culture and education, a place where churches, schools, and printing presses were built. Armenian merchants from this area traded across Europe, India, the Middle East. They became economically vital. But let's be clear, this era wasn't perfect. Some Christians, especially in rural areas, faced pressure. There were religious debates, tensions, and challenges. Yet, despite all of that, Christian communities didn't disappear. They adapted. They preserved their identity, and they continued contributing to Persian society. Fast forward to the 20th century. Iran enters a new phase under the Pahlavi dynasty. This was a time of modernization and secular governance. Religion became less central to state power, and for minorities including Christians, this created new opportunities. Churches operated openly. Schools and institutions expanded. Christians entered professions like medicine, engineering, education, arts. Cities like Tehran and Isfahan saw growing Christian communities. Although they remained a small minority, they were respected and integrated into society. Then came another major turning point. The 1979 Iranian Revolution. Iran became an Islamic republic. Now, you might assume this is where everything changed completely. But the reality is more nuanced. Under Iran's constitution, certain religious minorities are officially recognized. Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians. This means Christians today can practice their religion, maintain churches, celebrate holidays like Christmas and Easter. There are hundreds of churches across the country. Christian communities, especially Armenians and Assyrians, still exist with deep historical roots. Even more interesting, Christians have representation in parliament. They have a voice, even within an Islamic political system. Of course, the situation is not simple. There are limitations, and not all Christian groups experience the same conditions. But despite challenges, many Christians continue to live in Iranian cities, work in education and business, preserve their culture and identity. So, after 2,000 years of history, what's the real answer? Are Christians in Iran completely oppressed or completely free? The truth is, it's neither black nor white. It's a story of adaptation, survival, cooperation, and resilience. A story where communities didn't just exist. They contributed, they built, they endured, and they became part of the fabric of Persian civilization. If this changed the way you see history, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Because on this channel, we don't just repeat narratives. We explore the truth behind them. See you in the next video.